Okay, welcome back, and today we're going to be. It's basically a short documentary on the cars of Michael Schumacher as told through Rfactor2. Because a lot of his cars are available in the game. The only ones that weren't, the only key ones that were the 94 and 95 championship winning Benettons. But I'm going to show you what the game has to offer without those anyway, because it's got quite a few of his cars. So just sit back and enjoy this one. Tribute to a great man. So. First of all, here we got the 1991 Jordan, which was called the Jordan 191, which is Eddie Jordan's first entry and first foray into Formula One. And he did pick up a young German by the name of Michael Schumacher, who, as we all know, went on to have basically an outstanding career. For me, he's the greatest of all time, always will be. Don't argue with me on that. Everybody's got their opinion, that's mine, it will never change. So yeah, this is what he started out in. He had a Ford V8 engine in the back, and was once actually nominated, considered by many as the most beautiful car of all time. And it is, it's great. I mean, from the outside, we've only got a cockpit view here, but from the outside it looks phenomenal. Famous for its 7-Up sponsorship, Fujifilm, I think, on the rear wing. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it wasn't terribly competitive, but still brilliant looking. And this was Schumacher's first foray into F1 as well. But he eventually left them for Benetton after one race. But in that race, that was the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix, where he qualified 7th actually. He'd been putting in phenomenal times in practice all weekend. And this was where he kind of announced himself on the world stage as such. And what happened was, so he qualified 7th, and then about a mile into the race, the clutch went, and he had to retire the car. It was devastating. I mean, imagine he just had one race in this, what he could have done. I think he'd been up there with the big boys at the time, the McLarens, Ferrari to an extent, you know. Been a fascinating watch, but he did that, and then pretty much after that he was signed by Flavio Briatore in the Benetton team, which had a much bigger backing, and had drivers like Nelson Piquet, I think, became a teammate, people like that. But yeah, this was I think Eddie Jordan still to this day probably still bitter about the fact that he didn't get to keep Michael for at least the rest of the season. He found back then though it was more drivers could move around more freely and you'd get mid-season changes. It doesn't happen as much now. When back then, I mean back in my day certainly it was more of a frequent thing. Yeah, you don't see it as much now. You get it occasionally. Ferrari used to be quite big on it. Now not so much. We're here in Malaysia with this one, just trying to set a good time. Another great track, one for the history books. I still think Malaysia should come back to the circuit. It's a race I've always wanted to visit. Yeah. Back straight now. Looking a bit up on our previous times. I have had practice in all these cars beforehand, so you're only seeing a couple of laps from each car. Some only one. Yeah, this is looking good. To be up on the time just. Thoroughly enjoyable ride in that car. Brilliant. Okay, so moving on now to the 1991 Benetton. We're here at Hockenheim. So pretty much after the outing in the Jordan, he was signed, as I said earlier, by Flavio Briatore. His first 3 races in the Benetton, the results were 5th, 6th, and 6th. Now that's incredible for the time. I mean, that's points in all 3 races. And this again, had a Ford V8, and this car is where they ran it. I think for the first sort of part of '92. His first results in that season were 4th, 3rd, and 3rd. So yeah, that was they ran that for the first part, but then they switched it to the B192 after that one. And this was the Benetton designed by Rory Byrne, who later, as you know, joined Michael's Ferrari. But Benetton was where he sort of started to build this dream team. There was the Ross Brauns there, people like that. And they obviously, Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne both followed him onto Ferrari. I like the Benetton team. I mean, this was they had this sort of yellow livery for quite a while. I mean, this was early 1994. They went to like the blue one. It was sponsored by Mile 7 cigarettes. I think it was Camel that sponsored this one. Off there, sorry about that. But yeah, didn't it sound great? And what a great mod this is as well. So if you get a chance, go in there and give us a download. Because at some point, I think in a minute, you might see the brake discs actually light up. So somebody's modded that in. Look at that, you can see it there slightly, but towards the end of this big ass straight, you should see them light up again. Yeah, his Benetton career was incredible. I mean, he won the World Championship in 94 and 95. 94 he had the Ford engine, 95 they switched to Renault V10. And you can see, there's the brakes. Yeah, you can see how he kind of evolved the team, he brought the team up with him, same as he did with Ferrari. But in this game, yeah, there's no 94 and 95 car, sadly, which are two of my, I think the 95 car is one of my favourites. It's his career, that's who I grew up watching, and he'd always be my favourite driver. I love watching Mick now at Haas. I mean, it's not amazingly competitive, but it's still great to see a Schumacher name on the grid. It's incredibly fun to drive as well, this car. Absolutely pushing it through the corner.
That was a 1:22.31.
Okay, so after the Benetton years and his second World Championship in 95, he took the big gamble to join Ferrari. Now, I don't imagine many drivers who would turn down Ferrari if they come calling. I mean, it's like Real Madrid or Barcelona come in football. You know, you don't turn them down. So yeah, he started to build something at Ferrari, and this was his first season with them in '96. The car was not great, but he did manage to. He got wins out of it. And this was Ferrari's first time they used V10 in a long while. I think maybe ever. And they'd improved the shape of the car totally from the 1995 version. As you can see, I mean, if you look up the 1995 Ferrari, it's a lot different to this. Yeah, and that had a V12. This is a V10, so this is going to be lighter. But I mean, the handling with this isn't great. I can't say I enjoyed driving it. It's kind of you having to force it. And this was a year Damon Hill was world champion. I mean, he glided to victory basically. Michael wasn't really competitive. And the same in '97, really. I mean, Michael took Jack Villeneuve to the last race, but then he was disqualified for the alleged trying to push him off the track incident. So he was disqualified from the championship. Yeah, the Williams was good in those 2 years, but then again, Ferrari weren't amazingly competitive, which was the thing. You think if they'd have been a bit more competitive, it'd have been a different story. Because they used this car in '97 as well, and again, it just wasn't great. And his teammate was none other than Eddie Irvine. I quite liked Eddie Irvine when I was watching Formula 1 in the Jaguar years. I thought he was pretty good. Quite underrated. He was second, of course, in 1999 in the championship to certain Mika Hakkinen. For 98 and 99, he just utterly dominated. Mika Hakkinen, what a driver he was. One of my favourite opponents, Michael, for sure. The guys absolutely pushed each other to the brink. Here we are at Perez. Yeah, I mean, I'd say drive this car. Go and drive all of these cars that are going to be featured today, but just yeah, it's not the finest. It really isn't. It does sound great though, so it makes that crap handling and very hard to sort of manoeuvre, but at least it sounds great when you put the power down. V10 engine. cannot beat them. For me, better than the V12. Controversial, I know, but well, that was what the area I grew up in, where everybody had V10s. Hopefully they can find a way to get this sound back into Formula 1. What we've got now is pretty dire.
1-0.
So we'll come out and I'll show you now. This is the 99 car. Yeah, well, again, another dismal season under Ferrari. This was before the success sort of kicked in, but Schumacher had his boys with him now. He had Rory Byrne, Ross Brawn, they'd all moved over. And slight improvements were sort of starting to be made. And you just see, I mean, we're around Monaco now. So I'm just going to show you this one lap that I had was quite successful. But that's got close to the times they were then. But yeah, again, another V10. He did lose the championship to Mick Hakkinen, but he broke his leg at Silverstone actually after that crash. I think that's where Eddie Irvine had to sort of finish second. That was his best chance to ever be a world champion. But yeah, as for Michael, there was the time at the time at the start of the 2000s he was linked with actually going to McLaren to partner Mick Hakkinen. I mean, what a duo that would have been. Would Ferrari have been as successful? I honestly don't think so. Just a shout out to this circuit on 1966 Monaco. Look how dangerous this is. There's still got people with just right in front of the cars. I actually slightly prefer this layout as well.
The lap was a 1:13.
So yeah, good. That was not a bad lap. Okay, so we're on to the last car that the game actually features now, which is the F2004. For me, the greatest racing car of all time. It had 18 races in 2004. Schumacher won 13 of them. This car itself won 15. The other with with Rubens Barrichello. 13 races out of an 18-race season. Absolutely incredible. I mean, you just don't get that. I mean, Sebastian Vettel was imagine. But yeah, Sebastian Vettel was probably the last person who come close. I mean, he equalled this in his Red Bull. I mean, that Red Bull, that sort of period, that 4-year period where he dominated the early 2010s. That was incredible as well. Adrian Newey design. Couldn't go wrong. And Vettel, obviously a big fan of Michael's as well. You always hear about, yeah, this was the car for me. I mean, I love any game or sim that puts this in. It just screams class. A nice manoeuvre. Credit myself for that one. Side by side, here we go. And this is we're at Magny-Cours now in France. Circuit I quite liked as well. Michael was always very successful here. The run wide. He could stay ahead of the other guy. He's got back a bit now. Look in the mirrors. But yeah, tobacco sponsorship as well. But it definitely played a part in Michael's career. Of course it did. I mean, you know, who sponsored half of these teams? Marlboro. Who sponsored Benetton? It's Camel. Camel, Mild 7, people like that. That was the nature of the sport back then. And I still think tobacco sponsorship. I'm not a smoker myself, but it added something to it. It made it look class. It was a classy sort of thing to have on the car. Marlboro, Rothmans, Williams, you know, it all screams success of that era. It's a great time. It's when Formula 1 was at its peak. I mean, now it's not so great. I mean, I love it. I still go to 2 races a year, of course, but it's not what it was for me. I don't think. In terms of, you know, I can't stand Lewis Hamilton as well. I'll be honest there. It's been the most boring. This has been the most boring era of Formula 1. Nothing like this. I mean, Michael was dominating, but at least he was a classy guy. Sound bloke. Sorry about the driving in this as well. It's not been great. I haven't had a great deal of practice. But yeah, this went Ferrari at absolute peak. And dominance in motorsport, it all comes to an end at some point. Nobody dominates. It's in any sport. You can't dominate forever. Something has to give. Looks like it's given this year sort of with Mercedes. All comes to an end eventually. Yeah, and I think after the car after this, the F2005, I mean that was poor. That was poor, and I think Renault had caught up to him. Had a good young driver. Alonso had honed his skills. Flavio Briatore knew what he was on about. They worked wonders to beat Ferrari. I mean, they had to be good. They had to be good, and they were. Yeah, it's like Mercedes ended Red Bull's dominance, and Red Bull probably going to end Mercedes, and Red Bull go on to dominate for a bit or whatever. Then that'll probably be ended. That's how it goes. What an amazing year this was. Definitely my favourite. And yeah, I mean his career obviously come back with Mercedes in 2010, and I enjoyed seeing him up close again and going to races where he was. And for me that was fantastic, and memories I'll never forget there. And obviously it wasn't successful with Mercedes because it was a new sort of team, it was a start-up. The blueprint for success of which it later became, I mean, was laid by Michael. He laid the foundations for this, and he deserves a lot of the credit for what they've done in the past few years. But his time there again wasn't incredibly successful. I mean, I love that podium at the 2012 European Grand Prix, but that was incredible. I think there was a dry eye in the house that day. But I followed him religiously through that, and he still had it. He was in his 40s, and he was still brilliant. It was not as though he was an embarrassment. He was still taking the fight to the younger guys. And lesser cars. I mean, I remember in Silverstone in 2012 I was there, and he overtook Lewis Hamilton. There's just me and one German guy behind me screaming. The whole crowd just went dead quiet. Those are the little things I remember about Michael's time in Formula 1. And usually now I tell you to subscribe or like. You can do that. But I'm going to leave you with this, the image of a great man. Keep quiet, Michael. We love you so much. Take care.